Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. Napraprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Rutamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nishtaki. Om Agnanatimirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilita Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhatare Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini. नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणी जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद ये अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौरवतरुण्य हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे okay on 935 सपदि सखी वचो निशम्य मध्ये निज परयोर बलयोरथम निवेश्य स्थितवती पर सैनिकायुरक्षणा कृतवती पार्थ सखे रतिर्ममास्तु. So everywhere it is ratirmamastu. Ratir Rati Chame. In obedience to the command of his friend Lord Shri Krishna entered the arena of the battlefield of Kurukshetra between the soldiers of Arjuna and Duryodhana, and while there he shortened the lifespans of the opposite party by his merciful glance. This was done simply by his looking at the enemy. Let my mind be fixed upon that Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita 1.2125, Arjuna ordered the infallible Lord Sri Krishna to place his chariot between the phalanxes of the soldiers. He asked him to stay there until he had finished observing the enemies he had to face in the battle. When the Lord was so asked, he at once did so, just like an order carrier. And the Lord pointed out all the important men on the opposite side, saying, here is Bhishma, here is Drona, and so on. The Lord, being the supreme living being, is never the order supplier or order carrier of anyone, whoever he may be. But out of his causeless mercy and affection for his pure devotees, sometimes he carries out the order of the devotee like an awaiting servant. By executing the order of the devotee, the Lord becomes pleased, as a father is pleased to carry out the order of a small child. This is possible only out of pure transcendental love between the Lord and his devotees. And Bhishmadeva was quite aware of this fact. He therefore addressed the Lord as the friend of Arjuna. The Lord diminished the duration of life of the opposite party by his merciful glance. It is said that all the fighters who assembled on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained salvation by personally seeing the Lord at the time of death. So they attained salvation. So they attained two types of salvation. One type of men there who saw the Lord, but without any special attraction, they just merged into Brahmajyoti. And those which showed some attraction towards the Lord, they even entered the spiritual world. Therefore, his diminishing the duration of life of Arjuna's enemy does not mean that he was partial to the cause of Arjuna. Actually, he was merciful to the opposite party because they would not have attained salvation by dying at home in the ordinary course of life. Here was a chance to see the Lord at the time of death and thus attain salvation from material life. Therefore, the Lord is all good, and whatever He does is for everyone's good. I mean, even if we hear this a zillion times, it just doesn't enter our heads. I can talk about myself. Lord is all good. Whatever He does is for everyone's good. Apparently, it was for the victory of Arjuna, his intimate friend, but actually, it was for the good of Arjuna's enemies. Such are the transcendental activities of the Lord, and whoever understands this also gets salvation after repeating this in material body. Understands this. We have to understand this, meaning understand, like I've said multiple times in Shastra understanding means application as well. So if we can simply accept every situation in our life as Krishna's mercy, we will get salvation. Of course, I mean, we are not interested in salvation, but we will get mukti. But if you want prema, then it will take little more effort. If you want mukti, then it's ready. Prabhupada in another purport says, simply engaging in Krishna consciousness gives one liberation. Activities of Krishna consciousness. If somebody is actually engaged in the activities of Krishna consciousness, is already liberated, he says. Meaning, getting that liberation is not a big deal. Janma karma cha me divyam. It's not difficult. Simply knowing one can get liberated. But to develop love of Krishna is takes effort, takes dedication. And like yesterday, I was sharing some verses from Kapil Dev's teachings to Mother Devahuti. And Devahuti asks Kapil Dev saying that this Maya is actually, tightly, she has a hold on this Jiva. And Jiva also has some attraction to Maya. So how will a Jiva ever get liberated? Like it almost looks like it's not possible at all to get liberated. And then Kapil Dev actually answers that. That was the essence that I had put there on the group. Like perform devotional service. Hear about Krishna for a long time, meaning continuously. Hear for a long time. And then serious devotional service. Where is that? Yeah, perform duties for the pleasure of Krishna. Be situated in perfect knowledge. Be strongly renounced. So serious devotional service, hearing for a long time, perform prescribed duties for the pleasure of Krishna, be situated in perfect knowledge, be strongly renounced, engaging in austerity. This is the path to perfection. Like if we do this, then we can think about uh, Krishna Prema. But otherwise, he's always all merciful. Lord does no wrong in any circumstance because he's absolute, all good at all times. So this conviction is the stage of faith. I mean, depends on our faith whether we actually have this conviction um, about Krishna. He's all good at all times. So mukti is not a big deal for those of us engaged in Krishna consciousness. It is bhakti, it is prema that is difficult to attain, for which we have to put some effort. Vyavahita pratana mukham nirikshya swajana vadhat vimukhasya dosha buddhya kumatim aharad atmavidyaya yas charanatati parama tasyamestu. Just 1 second. Sorry. When Arjuna was seemingly polluted by ignorance, upon observing the soldiers and commanders before him on the battlefield, the Lord eradicated his ignorance by delivering transcendental knowledge. May his lotus feet always remain the object of my attraction. The kings and the commanders were to stand in the front of the fighting soldiers and not at home. And they were to stand in the front. That was the system of actual fighting. The kings and commanders were not so-called presidents or ministers of defense as they are today. They would not stay home while the poor soldiers or mercenaries were fighting face to face. This may be the regulation of modern democracy, but when actual monarchy was prevailing, the monarchs were not cowards elected without consideration of qualification. As it was evident from the battlefield of Kurukshetra, all the executive heads of both parties, like Drona, Bhishma, Arjuna, and Duryodhana, were not sleeping. All of them were actual participants in the fighting, which was selected to be executed at a place away from the civil residential quarters. This means that the innocent citizens were immune from all effects of fighting between the rival royal parties. The citizens had no business in seeing what was going to happen during such fighting. They were to pay one-fourth of their income to the ruler, whether he be Arjuna or Duryodhana. All the commanders of the parties on the battlefield of Kurukshetra were standing face to face, and Arjuna saw them with great compassion and lamented that he was to kill his kinsmen on the battlefield for the sake of the empire. See again, I mean, this we know from Bhagavad Gita. This compassion should never be on the material platform because Prabhupada clearly says, what is the use of the compassion for the dress of a drowning man? So, real compassion, Prabhupada says, there is self realization. Real compassion is self realization. If we are really compassionate about somebody, then we should help them to achieve self realization, meaning that we have to bring them to bhakti. He was not at all afraid of the giant military phalanx presented by Duryodhana. But as a merciful devotee of the Lord, renunciation of worldly things was natural for him, and thus he decided not to fight for worldly possessions. But this was due to a poor fund of knowledge, and therefore it is said that here that his intelligence became polluted. His intelligence could not be polluted at any time because he was a devotee and constant companion of the Lord, as is clear in the fourth chapter. Apparently, Arjuna's intelligence became polluted because otherwise there would not have been a chance to deliver the teachings of Bhagavad Gita for the good of all polluted, conditioned souls engaged in material bondage by the conception of false material body. For the good of polluted, contaminated, conditioned souls. What are they doing? Engaged in material bondage. How? By the conception of false material body. So they're just attached to this false material body, and that is a polluted state. And for those in that polluted state, Bhagavad Gita was spoken, and for that reason, Arjuna was put into illusion, or his intelligence became polluted. The Bhagavad Gita was delivered to the conditioned souls of the world to deliver them from the wrong conception of identifying the body with the soul and to re-establish the soul's eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord. Atma Vidya, or transcendental knowledge of himself, was primarily spoken by the Lord for the benefit of all concerned in all parts of the universe. Actually, I was thinking about this. Um, Even after hearing that we are not this body, we are spirit soul, when we just simply think about us, it is what comes to our mind is just this body, right? It's this picture of our body that is there in our mind. When we think about even doing devotional service, we are actually thinking of doing service in this body, using this body. Uh, so when you are praying to Krishna, saying, Radha Krishna, please engage me in your service, it is not to engage this body in his service. It's actually to engage us in his service. And of course, we got this vehicle, so we engage the vehicle also in his service. But this, from time immemorial, we have been living attached to this body, be it a human body, be it body of a pig, donkey. Of course, lower animals, they don't have the intelligence, or they can't really think about themselves as Atma. That's possible only in in human form of life. But even in human form of life, I see even after coming to Krishna consciousness, uh, I just seem to have a bodily conception. So if we are in this bodily conception, then we can never understand. Uh, as in, if we are always thinking I'm the body and we are trying to take care of the body, how will we rise above the body? Hmm. So that's one of the things, right? In that, whatever I had shared yesterday, it says strong renunciation by engaging in austerities. So we have to develop renunciation. We have to detach ourselves from this body. If we don't detach from our body, we will continue to remain on the material conception, even though we have knowledge. So many people, they don't have knowledge, so they are in the material conception. But we have knowledge. But you, in spite of having the knowledge, if we are still going to continue on the material platform, we are very unfortunate. So we have to do strong devotional service. That is the only solution. And this perfect transcendental knowledge which Prabhupada is so nicely given, it has to keep reminding us, okay, I'm not this body, I'm not this body, I'm that spark, I'm Satchidananda. This body is just incidental in this life. I want this body. Very, very difficult, very difficult. We have to constantly keep struggling. We have to keep trying. So though it is said ABCD, we don't seem to get past that ABCD till uh, long time in practice of bhakti. And when we do that, then that is Tomritatvaya Kalpate, Brahmabhuta Prasannatma. So that is Brahmabhuta stage. And that comes only after we come to Nishtha in bhakti. So when we practice bhakti with the Nishtha in that fixed stage, then we come to Brahmabhuta. So which means that before that we have to simply follow instructions. We still continue to think that we are the body, but it's okay. Okay, I've committed to do these devotional activities every day. I will just continue to do it irrespective of what is happening. So we'll just follow rules. And by following rules and practicing bhakti sincerely, then slowly, steadily, that anarthas will start decreasing. Then we'll become steadily fixed in our devotional service. Then we will come to this Brahma Bhuta, and then real devotion starts. So now we are doing devotion to actually bring us to actual devotion. Because now what we are doing is all contaminated by the modes. So we have to keep thinking about it. Actually, it's not, I've been thinking saying that, oh yeah, we say Vishya Vinivartante. If we simply engage in devotional service, all this will go. Yeah, all this will go if we don't feed into these topics, right? Meaning, if we don't keep feeding, meaning enhancing the thought that I'm the body, I'm the body, I'm the body, then it will go. But unfortunately, everything that we do seems to be enhancing this thought process of I'm the body. So when we live like that, then we can't. Then we can't get over it. So that is why serious devotional service, meaning pushing ourselves, mm, then slowly we can come pushing ourselves to do our sadhana in spite of all difficulties. Mm. See, devotees who were with Srila Prabhupada in the initial days, no, they had no personal consideration whatsoever. No personal consideration at all. Even to the extent of where will I stay, what will I eat. And these were not brahmacharis. Many of them were grihasthas. Mm. So they are actually teaching. They have taught us actually by example how we have to surrender completely, and that is serious devotional service. Today, somehow the concept is live comfortably and then do how much ever you can. But Those days, that was not the mood. Mood was simply about surrender to Prabhupada. Whatever Swamiji says, no questions asked. Do this, okay, done. If I'm not able to do it, I'm feeling miserably sad, bad that I'm not able to follow what Swamiji has said. That's all the mood was. No complicated, today people have become very well read in Shastra, this, that, and all that, and they're ending up in so many speculations and this and that. But those days it was so simple. Simply, okay, Prabhupada is saying, done, done, nothing else. Like this, we have to do devotional service. Still today, we can do that by actually reading Srila Prabhupada's books and sticking to what he's saying. But if we don't do that, we can't really make, yeah, we can get liberated. That's not a big deal. If not, yeah, now, sometime later, we will get liberated. But first, we have to come to liberated state. Then we have to come to prema. So it's a long journey. Long journey which can be shortened. Like Krishna shortened the lives of soldiers. By simply following acharyas, we will shorten that time span required to achieve perfection. There's so many beautiful instructions in Bhagavatam to actually enable us to do that. We simply have to become determined and say nothing else. This is my only goal. 37. Svanigamam apahayamat pratignam ritam adhikartum avapluto rathastha dhrita rathacharano chalad gur harir ivahantum ibham gatot gatottariyaha, fulfilling my vow and sacrificing his own promise. He got down from the chariot, took up his wheel, and ran towards me hurriedly, just as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He even dropped his outer garment on the way. The battle of Kurukshetra was fought on the military principles, but at the same time in a sporting spirit, like a friend's fight with another friend. Duryodhana criticized Bhishmadeva, alleging that he was reluctant to kill Arjuna because of paternal affection. A Kshatriya cannot tolerate insults on the principle of fighting. Bhishmadeva therefore promised that next day he would kill all 5 Pandavas with special weapons made for the purpose. Duryodhana was satisfied, and he kept the arrows with him to be delivered the next day during the fight. By tricks, Arjuna took the arrows from Duryodhana, and Bhishmadeva could understand that this was the trick of Lord Krishna. So he took a vow that the next day Krishna would have to take up weapons himself. Otherwise, his friend Arjuna would die. In the next day's fighting, Bhishma fought so violently, that both Arjuna and Krishna were in trouble. Arjuna was almost defeated. Situation was so tense that he was about to be killed by Bhishma Deva the very next moment. At the time, Lord Krishna wanted to please his devotee Bhishma. Prabhupada is not saying at that moment Lord Krishna wanted to protect his devotee Arjuna. But here he's saying he was wanted to please his devotee Bhishma by keeping Bhishma's promise. What is the promise? That I will make Krishna take up his weapon, otherwise Arjuna would die. Obviously, Krishna did not want Arjuna to die. So he will have to uphold Bhishma's promise of himself lifting a weapon. Uh, he kept Bhishma's promise, which is more important than his own promise, which was not to lift any weapon. That's what he had said before the battle. Seemingly, he broke his own promise. He promised before the beginning of the Battle of Kurukshetra that he would remain without weapons and would not use his strength for either of the parties. But to protect Arjuna, he got down from the chariot, took up the wheel of the chariot, and hurriedly rushed at Bhishma Dev in an angry mood, as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He dropped his covering cloth on the way, and out of great anger, he did not know that he had dropped it. Bhishma Dev at once gave up his weapons and stood to be killed by Krishna, his beloved Lord. The fighting of the day was thus ended at that very moment, and Arjuna was saved. Of course, there was no possibility of Arjuna's death because the Lord himself was on the chariot. But because Bhishmadeva wanted to see Lord Krishna take up some weapon to save his friend, the Lord created the situation. See, who can understand all this complexity? Uh, so on one end, he is putting one devotee in apparent distress, making Arjuna's death appear imminent. So one devotee seems to be struggling. Now Krishna is doing that to please another devotee. But in doing that also he would have some reason why he would do that to Arjuna as well. So that is why previously like Bhishma Dev said it's impossible to understand the plans of the Lord. We can't just reason anything out. You have to simply accept the fact that he is all good, all merciful, especially towards his devotees. That's all. He stood before Bhishma Dev to show him that his promise was fulfilled and that he had taken up the wheel. And Bhishma Dev was fortunate that all great devotees, right? Krishna is so intelligent. Krishna takes care of everything in every situation so perfectly. So these are the qualities of Krishna, and these are the rasas between Krishna and his devotees. And this is what we should be actually uh, focusing on when we read Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? Like I said, first time when we are reading for knowledge. Okay, this happened, that happened, something else happened. Okay, but as we continue our reading, what we should be deriving from our reading is clear understanding of this rasa, bhakti rasa. And then thereby we are trying to understand Krishna's qualities for practical application in our own life. So we read all this so that we can apply them in our life. Otherwise, what is the use of this theoretical knowledge? Theoretical knowledge is not going to help us go closer to Krishna. It's only by the practical application of these instructions that we can go closer to Krishna. Okay, I'm going to stop there. If anybody has any questions, comments, please. Okay, nothing will conclude. श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, जगत गुरु श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यः च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव। हरे कृष्ण।